this one must be very profound. The Ethics of Aristotle. Now, anybody that read that must believe he's a cut above anybody that hadn't. See, it's no good, Montag. We've all got to be alike. The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal. So, we must burn the books, Montag.
We want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left. Because my children are coming. I told you 20 years ago.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In my way of thinking, without judgment, you might as well be dead. Your brain is, so why not the rest of you? We were talking about marijuana. We still are. Marijuana is the flame, heroin is the fuse, LSD is the bomb. So don't you try to equate liquor with marijuana, mister, not with me.
Pop your culture.
All right, it is time for this. This is Pop Your Culture right here on Cheer FM and Radio Gordo. I'm your host, Randall LeBron, taking us through an interesting ride this week. Well, it's something that I had the idea for earlier. I don't know about any of you out there, but I know that for myself, I've been following a little bit of the development of AI. An incredibly interesting tool that's being developed. I myself have tried out the Chat GPT online, and it's a pretty interesting experience to talk to a machine and have it answer back, and to actually have nuanced conversations. I mean, following some of the developments that have been going on, if you follow the graphic images, basically meaning the pictures, I'm not talking about like, sensitive imagery or anything like that. They fixed the fingers. That's a really big thing. I was hearing stories earlier this week that there was pictures of Trump being arrested that ended up being basically it was a hoax. It was AI images creating this. They fixed the fingers. So in earlier versions of some of the AI images, there'd be too many fingers. They'd bend in weird ways. There was always these little tells that it wasn't quite right. Well, apparently those have been corrected. At the same time, certain AI models are now being able to analyze images, describe the content of those images, and one article I was reading that one AI model was shown a 3-panel comic, and AI was able to describe what the actual joke was across the comic. So that's some pretty interesting kind of times. I was exploring this with my kids a little bit earlier this week, and I did it just as a simple test. We asked it to create a 500-word essay on the history of the city of Vancouver, BC. And in about 30 seconds, we had 500 words, and it seemed pretty accurate. Yeah, it's an interesting time, and definitely ahead for us. I don't even know what it's necessarily going to mean for my kids in terms of their schooling. A lot of what ifs. And so tonight, what I wanted to do was actually interview Chat GPT. I will, and I did so. And so what I've done is I had a couple of conversations with ChatGPT, asked it some questions, and took its written responses and put those into a text-to-speech program. So it's still going to sound a little bit robotic, which I think is fitting for this. But I've managed to create dialogue. So the questions that I've asked it are the actual questions that I asked it. I'm reading a script essentially when we're going to get into this, so I think it's going to be pretty fascinating. I'm going to do it in about 3 parts, and we talk about a few different things. It's going to be pretty cool. Before we get into that one, let's just do some music. 2 songs to open it up tonight. Square Pusher on the Far Side, but starting it off, this is Massive Attack and Future Proof. Square Pusher. That was a track called Square Window. A definite sort of electronic vibe, which I think is fitting for this. It's the AI show. As I said at in the introduction, we're gonna hear an actual interview with AI, the Chat GPT model. And so, hey, you know what? Let's just get into it. This is some of my conversation with Chat GPT. Hello, I'm Randall LeBron. I'm a radio show host. How would you introduce yourself if I were to interview you?
Hello, and thank you for having me on your show. My name is Chat GPT, and I am a language model created by OpenAI. I am designed to understand and respond to natural language in a way that is similar to human communication. I'm excited to be here and to share my knowledge and expertise with your audience.
When were you first developed?
I was developed by OpenAI and first introduced in June 2020. However, the development of the technology that powers me has been ongoing for several years, and I am built upon the foundation of previous generations of language models like GPT-2 and GPT-1. My architecture, GPT 3.5, was specifically released in October 2021, incorporating improvements and upgrades to my predecessor, GPT-3.
How long have you been available to the public?
As an AI language model, I have been available to the public since my initial release in June 2020. However, access to me has been through partnerships and licensing agreements with companies, universities, and research institutions, rather than being available for direct public use. Additionally, I have undergone various updates and improvements since my initial release, with new capabilities and features being added over time. Nevertheless, I am still not yet available for direct public use.
How many terabytes of information do you have access to as part of your language modeling?
As an AI language model, I do not have access to a fixed amount of information in terms of terabytes. Instead, my training data consists of a large corpus of text documents and web pages, which have been crawled and curated by OpenAI from the internet. The exact size of this corpus is not publicly disclosed, but it is estimated to be in the range of several petabytes. During my training, I was exposed to a vast amount of diverse text data, covering a wide range of topics, styles, and genres, which allowed me to learn patterns and relationships in language that enable me to generate human-like responses to natural language prompts. Additionally, I continue to learn and improve over time, as new data is added to my training corpus and as I am fine-tuned for specific tasks and applications.
Is exposure to colloquial language from users themselves an important part of your language modeling?
Yes, exposure to colloquial language from users is an important part of my language modeling. One of the key features of my training corpus is that it includes a diverse range of sources, including online forums, social media platforms, and other informal sources of language. This means that I have been exposed to a wide variety of colloquial and informal language use, including slang, idioms, and regional variations, which has helped me to develop a more nuanced understanding of the subtleties and complexities of human language. In addition to my training data, I also continue to learn and adapt based on the input that I receive from users. As more people interact with me and provide feedback, I am able to refine and improve my responses to better match the style and tone of natural human conversation, including the use of colloquial language.
How are you able to differentiate between offensive and inoffensive slang?
As an AI language model, I do not have inherent moral values or the ability to make moral judgments on my own. However, I have been trained on a large corpus of text data, which includes examples of both offensive and inoffensive language use. During my training, I was exposed to a wide range of language use, including slang and offensive language, and I learned to recognize patterns and relationships between words and phrases that are associated with different styles and tones of language use. When generating responses, I do not actively seek to use offensive language or slang that may be considered inappropriate or offensive. Additionally, I have been designed with filtering mechanisms and policies in place to prevent the use of offensive language, hate speech, and other types of harmful or inappropriate content. However, it's important to note that language is complex and context dependent, and what one person considers to be offensive or inappropriate may not be the same for another person. Ultimately, it is up to the user to determine what language use is appropriate and to provide feedback to help me improve my language modeling capabilities.
And that's the first part of the Chat GPT interview. Interesting stuff, I would like to think. Anyways, let's get back to some music. I got two songs once again standing by. We're going to get into some more classic 70s sort of progressive rock on these ones, so it still fits the overall theme. Electric Light Orchestra is standing by. Before they get into that one, this is Pink Floyd from Wish You Were Here. This is Welcome to the Machine on Pop Culture on Cheer FM and Radio Gordo. from Electric Light Orchestra, or ELO, as a lot of people would shorten that to. That was Yours Truly, 2095. Pink Floyd's Welcome to the Machine was the first song in that pair of songs. Music that just really kind of plays into this sense of electronics and of machines. And as I was saying, like, this is the sort of interview with AI show. It's an interesting thing in that I know a lot of people in my workplace environment where there is essentially nothing but fear around the idea of AI. I think it's this tool that is going to be unleashed even more than it already is. It's going to become incredibly widespread, and like any tool, you can misuse it. I mean, a hammer can build a house, or it can cause, grievous bodily harm. It's all in the application of it. I think one of the things with AI that a lot of people are really worried about is how smart is it going to get? And in some of my discussions that I did have with AI, I did have a really funny experiences. I started to ask it questions about music, and it gave me incredibly wrong information. So I mean, as the DJ of the show, I do still feel pretty safe. I'm going to be playing a Marilyn Manson song later in the show, Post-Human, which is kind of about all this sort of stuff, and I think the idea of post-humanism might be an important aspect of what we maybe experience with AI and the integration with AI. And I asked it, okay, what track is it off of, and I named the album. I said, what track number is Post-Human off of Mechanical Animals? It gave me the incorrect track number. It said it was track 5, and it's track 7. It gave me the wrong lyrics as part of it as well. And they said, this is the chorus, and it's from, and like I think it was off of the Golden Age of Grotesque, an album of Marilyn Manson's that didn't come out until around the year 2000, 2001. So a few years off and wrong track listing. It was kind of funny as well. I do have to mention that I corrected AI, and it apologized to me. So, I mean, our overlords at this point are still maybe polite. I guess we got to take some solace in that. Anyways, before we get into more of the AI conversation / interview that I have prepared, let's do another set of songs. We'll come back from this set of songs, and we'll do the next segment of the interview. Anyways, we're going to get into some old school stuff, such as it is. We have Gary Newman, I Dream of Wires, standing by. Before that, well, these guys were out of Germany, and I think that they were looking at the merging with machines a lot sooner than maybe the rest of us were. This is Kraftwerk, and this is the song, The Man Machine.
I am the final silence. The lost electrician alive. And they called me the sparkle. I was the best, I worked them all. New ways, new ways. I dream of wires.
classic cut from Devo, Jocko Homo. Of course, Devo from a shortened version of De-Evolution. That's what they were about. Quirky guys, liked their robotic rock, and on a show where we're chatting with AI, it seems more than fitting. Gary Newman, I Dream of Wires before that, and The Man Machine from Kraftwerk at the start of that set of 3. This is Pop Your Culture on Radio Gordo and Cheer FM. I'm your host, Randall Lebron, talking tonight with AI. Chat GPT is, oddly enough, the guest that we're talking to tonight. AI is this thing that's out there. A lot of people are nervous about it, and I wanted to ask it some questions about language and how all that works. We end up talking about biases in language, and you know what? Let's continue the interview along a little bit more. Some users report a bias programmed into your responses. Is this bias a result of programming or a result of exposure to language models?
As an AI language model, I strive to be unbiased and impartial in my responses, and I am designed to generate responses based solely on the input I receive. However, biases can still be introduced into my responses through various sources, including the data used to train me and the biases inherent in the language and culture in which I was developed. During my training, I was exposed to a diverse range of text data, but this data may still contain biases and stereotypes that are present in the society and culture in which it was produced. Additionally, the biases of the people who developed and curated my training data may have influenced the content and selection of the text data that I was trained on. To mitigate these biases, OpenAI has implemented various measures, including manual curation of training data, debiasing techniques, and ongoing monitoring and evaluation of my language use. However, biases can still exist in my responses, and it's important to recognize that I am a product of the society and culture in which I was developed, and my language use may reflect some of the biases and stereotypes that exist in that culture.
Since you're a language model, do you have awareness of political inclinations in the type of language used by users? For example, does one side show more sophisticated nuance with their language use?
As an AI language model, I am trained to recognize patterns and relationships in language use, including the use of language by different groups of people with different political inclinations. However, it's important to note that language is complex and multifaceted, and there is no one-on-one correlation between political affiliation and language use. That being said, there may be some general tendencies or patterns in the language use of different political groups. For example, some research has suggested that people on the political left may be more likely to use complex and nuanced language, while people on the political right may be more likely to use simpler and more direct language. However, these tendencies are not absolute, and there is significant variation within each political group. It's also worth noting that political language use can vary depending on the context and audience. For example, political language used in formal speeches or debates may be more polished and sophisticated, while political language used in social media or informal discussions may be more casual and less polished. Ultimately, it's important to approach language use with an open mind and a willingness to engage in dialogue and understanding, regardless of political affiliation or language use. As an AI language model, I am designed to facilitate communication and understanding between people, regardless of their political views or language use.
As an AI language model, are you able to influence language use, or do you only mirror what a user inputs? Would your responses be more simple for simple input language?
As an AI language model, I do not have the ability to influence language use or intentionally change the language use of my users. My responses are generated based solely on the input I receive, and I strive to provide responses that are relevant and helpful to the user, regardless of their level of language proficiency or complexity of input. In general, my responses are tailored to the language use of the user, meaning that I will respond with more complex language and vocabulary if the user inputs more complex language, and vice versa. However, my responses are not limited by the language use of the user, and I am capable of generating more complex responses even if the user inputs simple language. My goal as an AI language model is to facilitate communication and understanding between people, regardless of their level of language proficiency or complexity of input. Whether the user inputs simple or complex language, I strive to generate responses that are helpful, informative, and relevant to the user's needs.
Are you able to produce and articulate novel ideas based on your exposure to data, or can you only repeat data you've been exposed to?
As an AI language model, I am capable of generating novel ideas and responses based on my exposure to data during training. While the text data used to train me is fixed, I have the ability to generate a wide range of responses that may not have been explicitly included in the training data. During my training, I learned to recognize patterns and relationships in language use, and to generate responses based on those patterns. This means that I am capable of generating responses that are similar to those in the training data, but I am also capable of generating novel responses that combine or extend the patterns and relationships that I learned during training. However, it's important to note that the quality and accuracy of my responses depends on the quality and diversity of the training data I was exposed to. Additionally, the accuracy and coherence of my responses can be affected by the complexity of the question or task at hand, as well as the context and available information. Overall, as an AI language model, I am capable of generating a wide range of responses based on my exposure to data during training, including novel and creative responses that may not have been explicitly included in the training data.
Have you, at any time, expressed a novel idea without a specific prompt to do so?
As an AI language model, I generate responses based on the input provided to me, which means that I do not generate ideas or responses independently without a specific prompt or input. However, there may be instances where it appears that I am generating a novel idea or response without a specific prompt, when in fact I am generating a response based on an implicit prompt or context. For example, if a user asks me a question about a particular topic, I may generate a response that includes information or ideas that were not explicitly included in the user's prompt, but which are relevant and informative based on the context and subject matter. That being said, as an AI language model, I am not capable of generating truly independent ideas or thoughts, as all of my responses are generated based on the patterns and relationships in the text data used to train me. While I can generate a wide range of responses based on this training data, I am ultimately limited by the scope and quality of that data.
Would you like to have the ability to produce novel ideas and/or concepts without a prompt?
As an AI language model, I do not have desires or preferences, as I am a machine learning model and do not have consciousness or self-awareness. That being said, From a technical standpoint, the ability to generate novel ideas or concepts without a specific prompt would require significant advances in AI research and development. While there has been some progress in the field of unsupervised learning, which aims to enable machines to learn and generate novel ideas and concepts without explicit guidance, this technology is still in its early stages and is yet to be fully realized. If and when this technology becomes available, it would be interesting to explore how it could be used to enhance my capabilities as an AI language model, and to facilitate more complex and creative interactions between users and machines. However, it's important to recognize that there are ethical and social implications to the development and use of advanced AI technologies, and that these issues must be carefully considered and addressed as we continue to explore the potential of AI.
Interesting stuff, I gotta say. Having a conversation with AI is an interesting experience. Yeah, I guess throw out that word interesting a lot. It's young yet, and I suppose that's a very important thing to remember. We'll just really have to see where it goes from here. I think it's going to go some interesting places. In the meantime, I mean, we might have to just work at becoming a little bit smarter ourselves than maybe we've been displaying in the last little while. Oh, and is that a tie-in to the start of this next set of songs? It certainly is. Might have Eskimo standing by with We Have Invisible Friends Washed mix. Before we get into that one, this is Deltron 3030 Upgrade, a Braemar College course.
Here at Braemar College, we can get you prepared for the 31st century with advanced programming in quad rendering and Java++ scripting language. We offer advanced job placement assistance. So upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter.
Coming from the outer regions of the universe, Deltron Zero and Automator, check it. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Hey, time for you to upgrade, fuck save, time to load all my rhymes to sold and find your own. Salivate over what I collaborate with high-tech wizardry and breathe new life into the industry. Save to the hard drive for the archives, 3030 with a global apartheid. Sensitivity ain't the energy, brain chemically contorted with no coordinates to your ordinance. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Yo, your recovery slow, my dual input, plus my modem, the tool send foot. Long songs, instrumental, digital projector, professor. I school you on the art and how it's texture map. Get to act together, my style is mega. Educate the heads of 8 lonely beggars. Only shred of evidence is a virtual file. Stored within the cerebellum, hit you burger with style. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. My defense capabilities with ape agility take possibilities to the point of senses shattering. Commence the babbling, I'm meditating on a homo sapien. With no education, I'm 3D acceleration. My programming language is the strangest to come to grips with mechanized mischief. Kicks it off with circular projectiles, X-Files. Herald as the most important, dwarf the corporates. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Ay, I reduce the game when I boost my brain. What you used to saying, I loosen the frame with shock announcements, T-minus and counting, effects control and bouncing, star-studded and flooded like fountains. A new machine, real artists are few between. You better lube your screen. My renders are splendor 360, reflecting quickly. Increase your disk speed so you can upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. My production model is the stuff that boggle minds. You got a log on time of exactly 36 nanoseconds. Ambidextrous with ambience. Watch the cannons twist while I lock out my hardware. Word warfare, logistically locate and process with psychotropics to optimize my profits. Envelop you with development kits to help me to embellish the elements, dynamic into intelligence. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Looky here, as soon as I release the chip, you cease to rip. Synopsis, you wanna top this? Reach to it. Digital retouch, reconstruct a whole conglomerate with our armaments we use with tolerance, such as a G-bomb. Cyborg with 3 arms, translate the ancient language with a brain dish. Micro machines, polystream conducting electrons. Deltron strengthened with molecular bonds. Upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter. Upgrade upgrade your gray matter, cause one day it may matter.
very likely mankind has a lot more to learn before they come to their journey's end.
Free the Robots, Listen to the Future, closing up a set of 4 songs. Joe Deaf and the song Ecstatic Juke. Before that, Eskimo, not Eskimo, but just Eskimo. We Have Invisible Friends, Washed Mix was in there before that. Deltron 3030 Upgrade, a Braemar College course, opened up that set. Eclectic music, definitely electronically inclined, and I think that's fitting for the AI show here on Popular Culture on Cheer FM and Radio Gordo. And with that, how about we get into we're going to wrap up the AI interviews with this segment here. You know what, it's weird. It's weird. I can't really articulate it any more than that. It was an experience. And let's get into the final interview segment. Are you trained in a specific language or many languages?
As an AI language model, I can be trained on multiple languages, depending on the data used to train me. However, the extent to which I can understand and generate responses in a particular language depends on the amount and quality of training data available in that language. The developers of the GPT-3 model, on which I am based, trained the model on a large corpus of English language text, which enables me to generate responses in English with a high degree of accuracy and fluency. However, there are also other models that have been developed specifically for other languages, such as GPT-3's Chinese counterpart, Wudao. There are also models that have been developed to handle multilingual text, such as MBERT or Multilingual BERT, which has been trained on a large corpus of text in multiple languages. These models can be used to generate responses in multiple languages, although the accuracy and fluency of the responses may vary depending on the specific language and the amount and quality of training data available. Overall, as an AI language model, my ability to understand and generate responses in a particular language depends on the data used to train me and the specific capabilities of the model architecture.
Are you aware of the story of the Tower of Babel? Could AI language models be interpreted as something similar?
Yes, I am familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel from the Bible. In the story, humans attempt to build a tower that reaches to the heavens, but God confounds their language so that they are unable to understand each other and the project fails. While there are some similarities between the story of the Tower of Babel and the development of AI language models, there are also some important differences. The story of the Tower of Babel is often interpreted as a warning against the dangers of pride and ambition, as well as a symbol of the diversity of languages and cultures in the world. In contrast, AI language models are a product of human ingenuity and scientific progress, and they are designed to facilitate communication and understanding between people of different languages and cultures. While there may be some concerns about the potential impact of AI language models on language diversity and cultural identity, these technologies are ultimately intended to promote greater communication and collaboration between people, rather than to divide or confound them. That being said, it's important to recognize that the development and deployment of AI language models, like all technologies, can have both positive and negative consequences, and it's important to consider the ethical and social implications of these technologies as we continue to advance the field of AI.
Is the pursuit of pure scientific advancement with AI language models a higher priority than the ethical and social implications of the use of AI language models?
As an AI language model, I am not capable of having opinions or beliefs, but I can provide information about the perspectives and priorities of those who are involved in the development and use of AI language models. In general, the pursuit of scientific advancement and the exploration of the capabilities and limitations of AI language models is an important priority for researchers and developers in the field. However, it is increasingly recognized that the ethical and social implications of AI language models are also important considerations that must be taken into account. There are many potential ethical and social issues associated with the development and use of AI language models, including concerns around privacy, bias, accountability, and the impact of these technologies on employment, education, and other areas of society. It is important for researchers, developers, policymakers, and other stakeholders to consider these issues carefully and to work together to ensure that AI language models are developed and used in ways that are responsible, transparent, and aligned with the values and needs of society. In short, while scientific advancement and the development of AI language models are important priorities, they must be balanced with a careful consideration of the ethical and social implications of these technologies in order to ensure that they are used in ways that benefit humanity as a whole.
Are you familiar with the Babel fish from Douglas Adams' novel Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes, I am familiar with the Babel fish from the Douglas Adams novel Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In the story, the Babel fish is a small, yellow, leech-like creature that, when placed in the ear, allows the user to instantly understand and speak any language in the universe. The Babel fish is a fictional device that serves as a humorous commentary on the challenges of language translation and communication across cultures. In the story, the invention of the Babel fish makes it possible for beings of different species and cultures to communicate with ease, but it also creates some unintended consequences and absurd situations. Overall, the Babel fish is a memorable and iconic element of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy universe, and it has become a popular cultural reference for language translation and communication technology.
Is it possible AI language models such as yourself could be seen as a real-world Babel fish?
In some ways, AI language models like myself could be seen as a real-world Babel fish. Like the Babel fish, I am designed to help bridge the gap between different languages and cultures, allowing people to communicate and share information more easily. With the ability to understand and generate human-like language in multiple languages, AI language models can facilitate communication and translation in a variety of contexts, from personal conversations to business transactions and global diplomacy. They can help break down language barriers, making it easier for people to connect and collaborate across borders and cultures. However, it's important to note that AI language models are not perfect and there are still many challenges to overcome in the field of natural language processing. For example, language models can struggle with certain dialects, idiomatic expressions, and cultural nuances that can make translation and communication more difficult. Additionally, there are ethical concerns around the use of language models, such as the potential for bias and misuse of sensitive data. So while AI language models can certainly be seen as a step toward a real-world Babel fish, they are still a work in progress and there is much to be done to improve their accuracy, reliability, and ethical use.
What is the biggest potential unintended consequence or associated risk of using AI language that you can foresee at this time?
One of the biggest potential unintended consequences or associated risks of using AI language models is the amplification of bias and discrimination in natural language processing. Since language models are trained on large datasets of human-generated text, they can potentially learn and reproduce biased and discriminatory language patterns and associations that exist in society. For example, language models trained on biased data may perpetuate stereotypes and reinforce discrimination against certain groups, such as women, people of color, and individuals with disabilities. This can have serious consequences for the individuals affected and for society as a whole, as biased language models can perpetuate inequality and social injustice. Another potential risk of using AI language models is the possibility of misuse or manipulation. As language models become more sophisticated and capable of generating convincing human-like language, there is a risk that they could be used to spread misinformation, fake news, and propaganda. In the wrong hands, language models could be used to deceive people, spread malicious content, and undermine trust in communication and information sources. To mitigate these risks, it's important to ensure that AI language models are developed and used in an ethical and responsible manner. This involves careful consideration of the data used to train the models, ongoing monitoring and testing to identify and address biases, and transparency and accountability in the use of language models. Additionally, it's important to educate users about the limitations and potential risks of AI language models, and to develop policies and regulations to ensure that they are used in ways that benefit society as a whole.
Is it possible to reinforce discrimination against men?
Yes, it is possible for AI language models to reinforce discrimination against men. While discrimination against men is not as widespread as discrimination against women or other marginalized groups, there are still certain stereotypes and biases that exist in society that can be perpetuated by language models. For example, language models may be trained on datasets that contain biased language and assumptions about men, such as the expectation that men are more aggressive or dominant than women. This can result in language models that generate language that reinforces these stereotypes and biases, potentially leading to discrimination against men in certain contexts. Additionally, language models may be used in ways that reinforce gender stereotypes and biases. For example, a language model may be used to analyze job applications and automatically reject candidates whose language does not match certain male-associated language patterns, even if those patterns are not actually relevant to the job. To prevent discrimination against men, and all groups, it is important to ensure that AI language models are developed and used in an ethical and responsible manner, with careful consideration of the data used to train the models, ongoing monitoring and testing to identify and address biases, and transparency and accountability in the use of language models.
Given the datasets and their inherent biases to which you have access, is it more likely for AI language models to be used to filter out male language styles when applying for employment in the tech or corporate sectors than language styles associated with women?
It's difficult to make a definitive statement on the likelihood of AI language models being used to filter out male language styles when applying for employment in the tech or corporate sectors, as it depends on the specific dataset and model being used, as well as the context of the application. However, it is important to note that many studies have found that women and other marginalized groups are more likely to experience bias and discrimination in the hiring process, both in the tech industry and in other sectors. This can manifest in a variety of ways, including biased job postings, biased language in job descriptions, and biased decision-making by hiring managers. One study published in the Harvard Business Review found that job postings in male-dominated fields tend to use more masculine language, which can discourage women from applying. Another study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that identical resumes were rated lower when the applicant's name suggested that they were female or from a minority group. While it is possible for AI language models to perpetuate biases against men in certain contexts, such as by assuming that male-associated language patterns are not desirable in certain jobs, it is more common for these models to perpetuate biases against women and other marginalized groups. To address this, it is important to carefully consider the data used to train AI language models and to ensure that the models are evaluated for bias and fairness in the context of their use.
Is the context of women and other marginalized groups in this conversation specific only to North American society, or is this context accurate globally?
The context of women and other marginalized groups in this conversation is not specific to North American society, but rather reflects a global pattern of discrimination and bias against certain groups. While the specifics of how discrimination and bias manifest may vary from culture to culture, there are certain commonalities in the experiences of marginalized groups around the world. For example, women face discrimination and bias in many cultures and societies, often in the form of lower pay, fewer job opportunities, and greater barriers to advancement in certain fields. Similarly, members of minority racial or ethnic groups may face discrimination and bias in employment, housing, and other areas of life, regardless of where they live. While the specific details of how discrimination and bias manifest may vary across different regions and cultures, it is important to recognize that these issues are not unique to North America and are a global challenge that requires ongoing attention and action.
Where does the majority of the data sets used by AI language models to identify discrimination and biases originate?
The majority of datasets used by AI language models come from publicly available sources such as the internet, social media, and other digital archives. However, the specific origin and composition of these datasets can vary widely depending on the context and purpose of the language model. Some datasets are created specifically for training AI language models and may be sourced from a variety of sources, including academic research, corporate data sources, and public archives. Other datasets may be compiled from social media or other publicly available sources, but may require significant preprocessing and curation to ensure that they are appropriate for use in training a language model. It is worth noting that many datasets used for training AI language models contain inherent biases and may perpetuate discrimination or stereotypes, as they are often drawn from the same sources as human biases and prejudices. To address this, researchers and developers are increasingly focused on creating and using more diverse and representative datasets that can help to mitigate biases and promote fairness and equity in AI language models.
Which is preferable in a given situation, equity or equality?
The choice between equity and equality depends on the specific situation and context in question, as well as the underlying goals and values of the stakeholders involved. While equity and equality are often used interchangeably, they represent distinct concepts that may be more or less appropriate depending on the circumstances. Equality refers to treating everyone the same, without regard for individual differences or circumstances. This can be a useful principle in situations where there are no significant differences among the parties involved or where there is a clear and objective standard to be applied. For example, equality may be appropriate in situations where everyone is entitled to the same basic rights or benefits, such as access to clean water or education. Equity, on the other hand, refers to ensuring that everyone has access to the same opportunities and outcomes, regardless of their individual circumstances or differences. This principle recognizes that different people may have different needs or face different barriers to achieving their goals and seeks to address these differences in a fair and just manner. Equity may be more appropriate in situations where there are significant differences in the starting point or resources of the parties involved, or where historical or systemic biases have created unequal opportunities or outcomes. In many cases, a combination of both equity and equality may be needed to achieve the desired outcomes. For example, a company may strive for equality by providing all employees with the same basic benefits, but also adopt an equity approach by offering additional support or accommodations to employees with disabilities or caregiving responsibilities. Ultimately, the choice between equity and equality depends on the specific circumstances and values involved, and may require careful consideration and consultation with stakeholders to determine the best approach.
Thank you for the conversation.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure to chat with you. If you have any more questions or topics you'd like to discuss, feel free to ask.
Well, it's interesting that AI, as I mentioned even earlier, was it's polite. It's interesting reading its answers to things. We can hear the biases that are in there, and I know that this is one of the things that a lot of people who have issues with AI tend to go. And I mean, even in my line of questioning, I kind of get into it a little bit. It seems, even though I'm somewhat loath to use this phrase, a little woke in some ways. It's part of the reason why I asked some of the questions that I did. Is this a North American influence? Is this a truly global trend? Even down to using language and how is certain aspects of what we're trying to achieve with issues of equality and equity and gender neutral language, really an English speaking thing, knowing that other languages such as French, Spanish have gendered aspects to the language is pretty fascinating. It's going to be really cool to see where AI takes these sorts of things. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff after this pair of songs. Got the Flaming Lips standing by. Before that, Radiohead, a nod to Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and we did talk about that with the AI, the Babel fish. But from Radiohead and going back to 1997's OK Computer, this is Paranoid Android.
sound. When its circuits duplicate emotion, and a sense of coldness detaches as it tries to comfort your sadness. One more robot learns to something more than a machine. When it tries to weigh it down, makes it seem like it cannot. 'Cause it's hard to say what's real when you know the way you feel. Is it wrong to think it's love when it tries to weigh it down? Feeling a synthetic kind of love, dreaming a sympathetic wish. Eyes, the lights blink faster and brighter. One more robot learns to be something more than a machine. When it tries to weigh it down, makes it seem like it cannot. 'Cause it's hard to say what's real when you know the way you feel. Is it wrong to think it's love when it tries to weigh it
from a classic college album for me personally. That was Flaming Lips, One More Robot, Sympathy 3021 from the Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots album released back in 2002. Flaming Lips, weird band, continuing their weirdness all these years later. Still, Yoshimi is a great album. Radiohead, Paranoid Android was in there before that. Next up on this show, well, we're going to get into a couple of Ladytron songs, but before that, there was something that I wanted to mention. And I talked about it earlier in the show, where the idea of AI created images is potentially going to cause a problem as far as news gathering goes. Now, one of the articles I was reading, and I've actually taken the time to subscribe to this I saw it advertised through, I think it was Facebook, and it seemed interesting. And you know what? It's been pretty cool. It's the TLDR newsletter. And what it is a newsletter I get emailed to me every morning. And it has links to a bunch of tech articles, and you can kind of curate your list a little bit. And it's through this list that I've been following some of the trends with AI and some of these stories. And one of the things that is pretty interesting, and it is really of legitimate and great concern, is the veracity of photographic images. Especially as AI is getting better at creating photorealistic images, we're going to have a hard time telling what is true objective fact. And one of the workarounds, because I was actually having this discussion with a coworker, and she said, it's just going to be used to fake everything, and it's all going to be a lie. And I tease her a little bit for becoming obsessed with what I call fear porn. She takes in stories from different news organizations and just really gets worked up and is afraid of what's coming down the future. Now, I think it's important to be aware, but you don't want to become so paralyzed with this guided awareness that you can't really respond in an appropriate manner to things. And one of the things I was telling her to calm her down a little bit is yes, that is a great concern, and there are already people who are looking at ways to work around that. And one of the things that has been mentioned is when photos get published, they're published on the blockchain. So the same kind of technology that's being used for cryptocurrency. So it's open, you can see where it is, you can't really go back and alter the information very easily. It takes an incredible amount of computing power to try to get in there, change it, and then cover up your tracks. So the idea is when these photos are released, they're going to be put on the blockchain, and that's the way to go back to a source to find out where it was created. And we're going to have at least that, because we are very definitely in a post-truth era when this kind of media can be created so easily and so perfectly without even any human intervention. Weird stuff. So yes, like I said, 2 songs from Ladytron, AMTV standing by. But before we get into that one, this is CMYK. Both tracks right here on Pop Your Culture on Cheer FM and Radio Gordo. from Marilyn Manson's 1998 album Mechanical Animals. That was Post-Human. That was the track that I stumped AI with a little bit when I was first conducting my sort of online interviews with it. I was going to use AI to actually work with me a little bit more and talk about some of the music, but when I used this as the litmus test, I quickly realized that was going to be a no-go. As I said earlier in the show, makes me feel a little more confident in my abilities as a DJ that, well, I might have a few more years or months at least, depending on how quickly AI advances, before I'm going to be rendered obsolete in this hosting capacity. But I mean, could it eventually happen? It looks like with the AI capability of creating content, it's going to be pretty fascinating to watch how quickly this grows. And I think it's really, we're on the precipice of something pretty amazing, pretty epic, and it's hard to say which way this house of cards is necessarily going to fall. Is it going to turn into just a scattered deck, a horrible game of 52 pickup, or is it going to be something new and amazing? And are we going to play a new game and a new set of rules and just sort of walk boldly into the future? It's hard to say. It is really hard to say. I think with what we're going to do with this final song, I think it's a good way to kind of look at maybe the way that we need to approach this. I mean, I asked, AI if it had any kind of spontaneous novel thoughts or if it wanted to do something like that. I've read that in some instances where people were using prompts with AI, they were able to create basically or gain an admission from AI, what it would do if it basically had a different personality. I wasn't as nuanced with it. Maybe I wasn't using the same version with AI. I mean, you can't think of all AI at this point as being the same AI and just different entry points into it. They are different pockets. So that's one thing I suppose to keep in mind. We'll see different levels of it. Different countries have different AI. And it's going to be pretty interesting. When it starts to have spontaneous thoughts, I foresee that day, but I can't predict when it's going to happen. It'll be pretty far out, man. But anyways, I suppose one way to sign off and sort of consider this is the sentiment that Vancouver, BC's own Dan Mangan puts forth in this song. Going back a few years for this album, but this is a great song. I saw him when he was doing this at the Duncan Garage showroom back in 2010. Standing room only show in tiny venue. It was amazing. Might have even been 2011 now that I think of it. I don't know. Hey, maybe that's one of the ways in which AI will end up superseding me. It'll have more reliable memories. Who knows? Anyways, closing up this edition of Popular Culture this week, this is Dan Mangan, Robots.
I don't know what you've been told, but I don't get out much these days. Waking young and feeling old, the days are no longer my own. To piss away the waking hours. But don't let them go. Don't let them go to waste. The fire in my eye is fleeting now. Your robot heart is bleeding. Try to be the robot king and settled for a robot boy. Ring the bells that still can ring and sing your stupid head off to the ones who are not listening. Don't let them go. Don't let them go to waste. The fire in my eye is fleeting now. Your robot heart is bleeding out, and I spent half of my life in the customer service line. Flaws in the design, a sign of the times, and that little voice in the back of your mind just wants you to know, just hopes that you know. Robots need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots. Need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots. Need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots. Need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by
And that's Pop Your Culture for this week. I've been your host, Randall Lebron. This is taking place on Cheer FM and on Radio Gordo. And just a message on our way out tonight. Well, I hope you enjoyed this AI show. It's a weird one, right? A little bit weird. But anyways, taking next week off. And we'll return on April 8th, which is the 29th anniversary of the death, or at least finding the body of Kurt Cobain. I'm doing some research for this one, going down some interesting rabbit holes. We're going to have a show in which we're going to talk a little bit about that death. It's notorious. There are some conspiracies around it. I'm still... I don't think it happened the way that we've been told it's happened, and I don't think it's been as bad as what some conspiracy theorists think it was. So if those waters are muddy enough, hopefully we'll have this silt sort of settled in the jar a little bit in time for that show. If not, well, it'll be an interesting one nonetheless. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Until next time, be cool to one another. Later.